So hi, everybody. I was sort of expecting I would be giving a talk to people that didn't have much to do with speech, and I really didn't make the obvious connection. And hopefully it'll still be interesting, even to you old-timers that are out there. What I want to talk to you about tonight is the design of automated phone systems, which is what I do, and how that differs from design, quote unquote, in the real world. First off, let's just talk about the design space that we work in at Nuance. So I work for Nuance Communications. There's an office here in Burlington. There's offices in many other places in the US and around the world. And we do a whole bunch of different things. So Nuance is responsible for Dragon Naturally Speaking. We didn't create it. Dragon was its own company. But most of what Nuance now has came from acquisitions and other growth over the years. We have put out Dragon Dictation and Search on the iPhone and the BlackBerry. Those are free apps, and I highly recommend them to anybody who's got an iPhone. We have a thriving business in medical transcription, so I'm told. I don't have anything to do with it. We purchased Dictaphone a while back, so we do other kinds of business-related dictation. We have an automotive group that works on putting speech into cars. So if anyone here have a Ford with sync in it? Okay. Well, next time you go to buy a car, check out the Fords. I don't get any money for that, but actually it's kind of cool. We put voice dialing on a bunch of different cell phones. We do embedded text-to-speech, so if you, anyone have a GPS system that talks to them? Okay, I got some hands there. All right. If it says out names of particular streets, that very well may be text-to-speech from Nuance. And then you have enterprise solutions, and that's the group that I work in, and have worked in actually since I've been there. And Nancy and Gilbert have worked there as well. It's an interesting business because basically our charge is to spend 80% of our time consulting to outside companies to help them design or redesign their automated phone systems. So I'm going to guess that most of you here in this room, if not all of you, have an idea about what you think about automated phone systems just as consumers. And the thing about this business, and actually one of the reasons that I really liked it when I got into it, is that it's really hard to imagine a field where you have a weaker opponent than the other people in this space, because a lot of phone systems that you call sound like this.
Thank you for dialing the Acme Corporation. If you're calling from a touch-tone phone, press 1. All other callers, please write us a letter. If you're a new caller, press 1. If you're a priority 1 caller, press *2. If you need instructions, press 6. If you want to place an order, press 7. If you're placing a new order, press 1 followed by the # sign. If you're placing a duplicate order, please hold and the next available operator will handle your call once we finish talking to everyone else.
Okay, raise your hand if you've had a phone interaction like that with an automated phone system. Okay. So yeah, you would think, wow, if that's sort of what people expect when they call into companies, we ought to do a lot better. And of course, plus Nuance has an angle where we don't exclusively do this, but we do really encourage people to use speech interaction so that people aren't pressing buttons but are speaking what they want, because there's a lot of good things that come out of that. It turns out that sometimes it's not quite so easy to build wonderful systems with speech. And half of this talk is about some of the problems that there are, and half of this talk is about sort of a philosophy about how to make them better. So let's look at some of the challenges. So the first challenge is speech recognition. So there's a lot of people here who've worked on speech recognition in one form or another. It's hard. It's, ever since we started doing it collectively as a technological community, a lot of really smart people have struggled for a really long time. And I have a collection of newspapers in a drawer somewhere, and they're spaced about every 2.5 years. And they all begin and they go back about 15 years, and they all begin by saying something like, it used to be that speech recognition was the stuff of Star Trek and HAL in 2001, A Space Odyssey. But now the technology has evolved to the point where it's finally beginning to be used in the mainstream. So I have that from 2007 and 2004 and 2001, 1998, and so on. And somehow we just keep being on that verge. So there are challenges there. I actually don't want to spend too much time talking about that. There are more generally challenges with audio-only design. So some of these is that there's no visual organization to guide anybody who's using the interface. There's, you can look at a GUI in a language you don't speak and quite possibly have a very good idea about what's going on there and how much breadth of opportunity you have and maybe even exactly what the GUI is good for. But with a voice interface, there's none of that. A big point is that there's no persistence. So words on the screen stay on the screen, labels under a button stay under the button. But when you're speaking at someone, when the speech is gone, it's gone. And so we have a lot of concerns about cognitive load and the ability for people to remember the options that we're giving to them without overloading them. So it's great, you have speech, you can say 1,000 things, but you can't say 1,000,000 things. And it takes a while to tell people the 1,000 things they can say, and they'll probably forget most of them by the time you're done. You can't skim in an audio-only design. So you have to design sort of a one-size-fits-all interface. There are some exceptions to that and tricks we can do. But you can easily put multiple pages of text on a web page, and people will figure out what they want to read and what they want to skip, and they'll get through that page faster or slower. End-user license agreements being my favorite example. And that's great. And you can't do that in an audio interface. If you're going to play an end-user license agreement to somebody, by gosh, they're going to be there for a while. Another problem is that I don't want to say that there's no iconography, but there's very little iconography. So we've all grown up in a computer culture now where we expect to see icons for highly sophisticated, incredibly complex technological marvels. And it might be a picture of a bunny hopping or a phone ringing off its hook or something like that. And that's fine because those kinds of little simple pictures can communicate an awful lot to us in a graphic user interface. In an audio interface, if you try and play those games, you do end up sounding like Mickey Mouse. And so while there are some things you can do with audio, you can have tones that go up and tones that go down and music beds underneath things, and some sound effects in some places. You don't even have that shorthand. You really have to use your words, as we parents like to say, to get your point across. And finally, sort of like the first point, a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you're designing a graphic interface, you can put pictures there, and then you don't have to put 1,000 words. But if you're doing an audio-only interface, you're pretty much stuck. So those are some of the challenges. Another challenge that's been pretty well documented is that the anthropomorphic effect of someone talking to a speech-only system, and particularly over the phone, is that everyone anthropomorphizes the automated system. Cliff Nass has done a lot of studies out in Stanford about this and documented this time and again. And we see it all the time in systems that we use. And the interesting thing is that people don't, in general, my strong belief is that people don't think they're talking to a real person, but they can't help but interact with the system like it's a real person. And now I want to play my favorite quote from 12 years of listening to recordings of people interacting with these systems. This is somebody who had gotten some way into an application and was trying to make herself understood.
Lady, if you can understand English, you know what I'm saying. I'd like to speak to a living body, please.
She knows it's not a living body that she's speaking to. So, the other thing that's really interesting is that if you encounter a complicated interface on a screen, If you go to Picasa for the first time and you've never worked with web albums and you don't really know anything about it, it's complicated. There's a lot of stuff on the screen. You kind of see that and you get that. And you say, oh my gosh, look, there's 12 pull downs and there's all these things over on the side and I'm not familiar with that kind of scroll bar. And you say, all right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to figure this out. And maybe it's easier than you first imagined, maybe it's harder, but there's a nice sharing of information there about the complexity. The complexity of speech recognition, I don't have to tell a lot of people in this room, is really complicated. So I have another example here of audio I want to play. This is actually a montage of responses, and I'll give you the context. We designed a system for one of the phone companies to have people call in and report that they need their phone system repaired. This was a few years ago. And one of the things that the phone company wants to do is to give the callers the opportunity to do the repair themselves. Isn't that generous of them? And it actually turns out a lot of people want to do that because they don't want to miss work waiting for the phone company guy to show up. So there's a question here in the form of a recorded prompt that gets played out over the system, and it asks a yes-no question. And basically, if you say yes, then it's going to say, okay, great, let's see if you can fix the problem yourself, or at least diagnose it a little bit. And if you say no, it's not going to do that. And if this was something on a screen somewhere, the question would be there, and there'd be a yes button and a no button, and you'd move your mouse over the yes or the no, and you'd click, and you'd be done. So here is a set of responses of what people actually, you'll hear the question, and then you'll hear a series of responses that different callers made to the question, okay?
There may be a test jack located at the side of the house near the electric meter. It'll be a small box marked Network Interface Device. Do you think you can get to that box?
No, not at this time. I'm away from home.
I can try. Not right now. Someone can.
I need more information or something.
I already did that. I already have.
I said I tested the box. I'm in a condominium. There's a box. Probably.
No, I can't get to it, honey.
I don't know. What's that got to do with the voicemail?
No. I'm disabled.
I don't know where it is. I'll try.
I am not at my house. I couldn't make a call from my house.
Not now. It's too dark out.
So if you build a speech interface that has a grammar that includes the words yes and no, you're not going to do very well with any of those people. Although I should point out that every single one of those responses, except the dog and the horse, who I guess should be commended for being able to dial, are answering the question. They're answering the question. And the interesting thing about this is that that question is asked about 8 or 9 turns into this phone conversation. So anybody who got to that question had to already be successful for 8 or 9 turns interacting with a speech recognition system. They got this far, and then that's how they respond when we ask a admittedly complicated and wordier than I would like yes-no question. And you can't really go through the phone line and say, hey, it's just a computer. Keep it simple. People can't help but have this kind of reaction. And they don't really, it doesn't seem to them that they're saying anything unusual. So let's sort of talk a little bit more about these phone systems and some features of them, whether we like them or not. When you're in the business and you're listening to people talk about this, you hear quite a lot about these systems. And sometimes the designers at Nuance get together and lament how we can't tell anyone what we actually do for a living, because people get angry at us. And I finally figured out after about 10 years that if people say, oh, what do you do, Steve? If I say, yeah, you know those automated phone systems that you get when you call a company and you can do stuff on your own? I'm done. That's as far as I get, because the person I'm talking to says, oh, I hate those things. Oh, do you know what happened with this? And they stop listening to me. If I tell them that I consult to companies to try to make their phone systems better, they say, oh, God bless you. But It took me a long time to figure that out. And to give you some more examples of what this is like, here's some more recordings of a system we deployed. This is for a different telephone company. It's looking at the caller ID to determine the phone number of the caller. And it's the first question in the application. It's, are you calling about this number that I see you're calling from? Now, if you're calling the phone company and it's reading caller ID, that seems like a pretty legitimate question, yeah? You know, you calling about this number? Because, you know, we'll look up the account, we'll get the information on it, we'll fix it, we'll augment it, we'll do whatever you want, we'll change your billing. Perfectly reasonable question. Again, here's the question, and here's a montage of answers. And listen to the tone of the speakers.
The number I got for you from caller ID is 815-287-2029. Is that the number you're calling about today?
No. Yes.
No.
Yes. No.
Yes.
No. Yes. No.
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 Oh. No.
Yes.
Okay, well, at least they're saying yes or no. I listen to these and I'm like, what did we do? It's the first question. It's a legitimate question. These people are completely fed up and they haven't even started. And our job is to get people to play and to, you know, try and use automation because, as I probably should have mentioned by now, the biggest marketing reason for companies to buy these systems is because they save money if people can do self-service instead of talking to an agent. So the reason why people sound that way, in my opinion, is pretty simple. We belong to an industry that routinely breaks rules of etiquette. And pretty much everyone is familiar with how it breaks those rules of etiquette, and they are expecting for those rules to be broken yet again. And so this thing that they're talking to, which they know is a thing, but they can't help treating like a person, is something they don't have a good relationship with, even if they've never talked with it before. So I'm going to put up some phrases that we advise every single client we have to never use. And you finish the phrase if you've ever heard it said on a phone system, okay? Listen carefully as our menu options. Here we go. Your call is... We're experiencing unusually high... Okay, I'm going to this one you don't have to finish. Okay, I'll transfer you, but I'm only going to ask you one more question before I do that. Okay. When you hear these, so you guys have heard these, right? On phone systems? Yes? Okay. Do you ever believe them? Come on, you don't think? Oh, well, maybe the options have changed, so let me listen to it. No. You don't think, well, that's good, at least my call is important to them. Okay, and these things are everywhere. And so when you play a prompt like this at the beginning of a phone call, what you're essentially saying to the caller is, hey, I'm going to be lying to you during this call. And it's really not a great way to start a conversation. And so the rule of etiquette that the system is broken is a pretty simple one, which is tell me the truth. And if you're not going to start off the conversation by telling people the truth, why should they listen to anything else you have to say? Why should they listen to, there are no more seats available? Why should they listen to, you know, the flight has already departed? You know, there's reason to distrust what they're hearing, and so that's a real problem. Here's a different kind of problem with a different rule of etiquette that's broken. These are actual prompts from actual systems you can call into, but don't ask me which ones, because I actually don't know. They're obviously not the first prompts you hear at the beginning of a call, but at some point or another, you can call into an automated system and hear, while our title examination section has approved the document submitted for the issuance of a title, our computer system has rejected the application for an additional review by our title error correction section. And a customer said, would you please record this? And we said, not really. And they said, no, you got to record it. Our lawyers told us we need to play it. And we said, can we talk to the lawyers? And they said, no, just record it. So we said, you're paying the bills, and it got recorded. There's another prompt. Also, 1 point is assigned if during the experience period there are two or more accidents, each of which resulted in damage to property, but have not been assigned a point under the other accidents I just mentioned. So those of you that were hoping to sign up for auto insurance by yourself without having to deal with some nasty human being, all you have to do is get through these prompts. Another system, not an insurance system, but, well, you know, you fill in the blank for what business this is. Which form would you like? Change of beneficiary, W-9, or change of address? That's a little better. What if you want a different form than those three forms? What are you supposed to say? Do you know? That's the next slide. I'll get to that. And the question can actually be really simple. It might just be, which would you like, billing, orders, or repair? Now, I mentioned to Lauren that I used to work at 9X, and that was the main menu that they had, although they did it with touch tone. And, you know, I'm making this up a little bit just to be cute, but, you know, it's perfectly possible. What if you order call waiting on your phone, and you talk to some nice person in the call center who says, okay, call waiting will be active about 48 hours from now. Sorry, you're calling on Saturday, and you know, but about 48 hours, your call waiting will be active. And so your call waiting gets, you know, a week, 2 weeks go by, and your bill arrives in the mail. And on the bill, there's a surcharge for call waiting. You think, well, I ordered call waiting, but it's been, geez, I don't remember how long. Was it a week? Was it 2 weeks? And I haven't heard that little beep beep thing that you're supposed to hear. Aren't you supposed to hear that little beep beep thing with call waiting? I don't know. Well, let me call the phone company and make sure that, you know, everything's okay. So you call into the phone company and says, which would you like, billing, orders, or repair? And, you know, none of those seem to fit, or all of them seem to fit, depending upon your mindset. So the rule that's being broken here is, you know, systems that don't speak the caller's language. So systems that don't tell the truth, systems that use words and phrases that the person they're talking to, they should know, can't understand. This next page, we already had someone anticipate it. This is not a, you know, call and response thing, but applications that treat zero or operator as an invalid response. What is the point to that? And we have gone to people and we have said, please, please, at least if someone presses zero, if you don't want to have anyone in the call center deal with those people, at least say, oh, you press zero, sorry, we don't have any people who can pick up the phone right now. And we've had customers who've said, no, we don't want to do that. So they just, it's like, okay, there is no zero. To me, it's sort of a much, much worse version of when you go looking for a phone number on some company's website, you know, and you can never find it. So it'd be nice if there was a page that just said, we really don't want you to call. But then there are applications that work if you press zero, but only if you press it multiple times, as if this was some big mystery that people weren't going to figure out. And Paul English came up earlier in the conversation. He started GetHuman.com. I don't think he's associated with it anymore. But GetHuman.com sent around the IVR cheat sheet that was sort of spam, fram, mail a few years ago, which was the secret sequence of numbers you needed to push to get through to a live human being at over, 500 different companies. And people would pass this along and say, wow, this is great. Tell your mom she doesn't have to deal with it anymore. And actually, about a third of the entries in that entire list say, press zero repeatedly until an operator comes on. People still do it. And then there are applications that let you press zero or let you say operator. And when you do, it says, OK, I'll get you an operator. But they don't tell you that you can do that. And we have a lot of people that feel, well, you didn't tell me, so I'm mad at you. So I don't want to deal with you. And the rule here that's being broken is don't box me in. These are pretty basic rules. And one of the ways, by the way, that we work with our clients to convince them that they shouldn't break the rules is by putting the basic rules up front. So if you meet with a client, you're 5 weeks into the design process, and someone says, oh, our lawyers just said we should say, we're experiencing unusually high call volumes. And you try and argue that point, you might win, you might lose. But if you first meet with a client, you say something like, okay, I need to know this. Do you want to lie to your users? No? Okay, fine. Okay. And you get some agreement there, and then you can sort of apply the high-level rules of etiquette throughout the interactions. And I use the word etiquette very deliberately because, like I said, people feel like they're talking to a person. Finally, are you familiar with these phrases? Lower prices may be available on our website. Isn't that useful when you call up a company? And it tells you, it's like, oh, lower prices may be available on the website. I'm glad they told me. Or this phone system now allows you to check the status of your order. And, so you're probably thinking, well, that's good. That's not why I was calling, but now I will check the status of my order. This call may be monitored for quality. There you go. Or, this most nefarious one of when an actual human being comes on the line and says, thank you for calling customer service. This is George. Can I have your account number, please? And you want to say, I just gave the friggin' computer my account number. So the rule here is respect my time. And the question is, these are pretty simple rules. Tell the truth, don't box me in, respect my time, speak my language. Why is it so many companies have trouble following these rules? Well, I think one of the reasons is that when you're designing these automated systems, you are designing in English or in whatever natural language the system is going to be deployed in. And designing in English is typically done outside of this field in broadcast media. And there are implicit rules that we as a society have for taking in broadcast media words and understanding that they were not directed at each of us individually, but are directed at an audience. And there are certain things that are perfectly permissible to do in a broadcast medium that you would never do in a one-on-one interaction, even though it's all the same language. So for instance, when you read new and improved on the front of a cornflakes box in the supermarket, you don't say, oh, those horrible marketeers, it's not new and improved, they're just trying to fool me. You go like, oh, okay, they changed something. I like cornflakes, and you pick it up. If you read in the newspaper, haha, like anyone reads the newspaper, critics agree it's the #1 comedy in America. Do you think, oh, I didn't know that? We're just used to hearing these things, whether it's a politician saying something, even if it's somebody, it does bleed over into interpersonal communication. You say to someone, how are you? And they say, fine. You don't say, no, you're not. Why are you lying to me? You just sort of take the fact that there are lies going back and forth. So given that we all operate in this broadcast medium milieu, and I always like to work the word milieu into a talk when I can, then when we're co-designing these systems with these companies that need them, from their perspective, why not say your call is very important to us? I mean, it really is important to them. Why not say it? Why not say, for your convenience, we're now offering this? And you know the old joke that whenever you hear a company say, for your convenience, you're supposed to hear it as, for our convenience? Right. So it's just, people have a lot of trouble empathizing, which is something probably everyone in this room is familiar with the users of a system, even if they themselves are sometimes the users of a system. And a lot of what we do when we're working with clients is try to help them empathize with those users by looking at this not from the sort of pure social point of view, but from the more one-to-one personal interaction. Another example. So everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with what's on the screen now. This is the old Stella Liebeck legacy from the McDonald's lawsuit. So does it bother anybody that, You might find it humorous, but does it bother anyone that your Dunkin' Donuts cup says, caution, the beverage you're about to enjoy is extremely hot? No. Okay. Now imagine that every time you went to Dunkin' Donuts and said, I'll have a medium coffee, regular please, and they got the coffee, and you know they have the 18 people behind the counter so they can get it to you in about 6 seconds. And they give you the coffee, but before they give it to you, they say, now, sir, I'm going to need you to say yes or nod your head to affirm that you understand that the beverage you're about to enjoy is extremely high. No, I'm sorry. I really need you to say or nod your head. Would you do that, please? Yeah. Even the airlines gave up doing that, right? You know, it's like, did you pack the bags yourself? But the problem, that would drive everyone crazy. Maybe not the person in the front of the line, but certainly the 6 people standing behind them watching that happen turn after turn would go crazy. And it wouldn't, you know, it would stop as soon as it started, even if someone was foolish enough to start it. And the lesson here is the cost of add-ons in visual media is very low because of the skimming thing that we talked about. And clients, people in general, have a hard time understanding that the cost is much higher in audio where everything is serial. Now, there are cliches that have been crafted in other media, and I wish I had audio examples of these, but you know, when you're watching TV and you're seeing, you know, a commercial for some drug that's going to affect your metabolism, and the voice comes on 3/4 of the way through it, you know, usually while people are picking daisies or having a picnic, and it says side effects may include death, you know, and, you know, mental retardation, you know, and the list goes on, and it goes at about 100 miles an hour, and you can't really hear everything, and, you know, people who are doing blah, blah, blah should never take this drug, and you're like, what? Now, do you say, well, I'm never taking another drug again? Some people do. Most people don't. It's okay to do that in a medicine commercial. It's okay to say to people who are about to make one of the biggest purchasing decisions of their life, buying a car, taxes and fees not included, your mileage may vary, offer not available in all states, you know, residents of Massachusetts and New Jersey need to do this and that, and you don't listen to it. Because it's spoken quickly, it's spoken in a different voice, it's spoken low, it doesn't match what you're seeing on the screen. There's all kinds of ways in which large corporations say to people, here's something really important that our lawyers are making us say that you don't care about. And we all say, great, thank you for not making me listen to it because you're right, I don't care about it. You don't get that in phone systems yet. Maybe that'll come along soon, but it would be nice, you know. We've had plenty of customers where an automated system picks up and it's 45 seconds before the caller has a chance to do anything. There are just so many messages there. There's also corporate culture, and so all of these systems are designed in big corporate cultures, and this, you know, I think will probably be a lot more familiar to people. How am I doing on time, by the way? Okay. There's the last-minute legal disclaimer that comes in from the lawyer on the other coast that was forwarded by an email from somebody who's your superior that said, oh, put this in. And the people you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis are like, oh, here, Steve, you got to put this in. It's like, no, remember we said we weren't going to lie to the customer. We swore in blood. You agreed. And, you know, the person you're talking to says, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to go back to my boss to tell her boss to call a lawyer who she can never reach on the other coast to try and work out an alternate version of this message. Because if we don't get it deployed by tomorrow, we're all fired. And so, you know, that message goes out there. And, you know, that's really a hard thing to respond to. I don't know what to say in those situations. I wish I did.
Can you tell the lawyer, oops, I'm sorry, we didn't get your message, it'll go in next year?
I could say that, but the person who works at the same company as a lawyer does is going to get, you know, in big trouble for doing that. Automation incentives, this is obviously the big one. Why tell people you can talk to an operator? Because more people will say operator. And then there won't be as many self-service calls, and then the system won't save as much money. So there's always that trade-off. And particularly in a lot of corporations, the distinction made between cost centers and profit centers is no more clear than in companies that have a big customer service over the phone department. Because typically the only way that people who run customer service phone departments are rewarded is by cutting costs. Nobody ever goes back to the head of a call center and says, our customer loyalty is up 2 points this year. Good job on the phones. They say that to somebody totally different who's putting ads in the paper or giving away toasters or whatever. But the people who we work with to build these systems have one incentive, and that's to cut costs. It's also true that automation went to the extent that it is sort of at odds with customer satisfaction. Automation almost always wins, and this is just sort of a byproduct of the fact that all of these cost arguments are made for it. Because when you deploy an automated phone system, you typically know the effect within hours. You know, let's say you did something horribly wrong in the new system versus the old system. Some call center manager will come running down the hall yelling to no one in particular, who changed the automated system? Change it back. Our wait time for an agent just went from 2 minutes up to 15 minutes. Something's wrong. And it'll get fixed right away. But if you want to discover something subtler about whether people like the new system better or not, you have to go out and do a caller satisfaction survey. That data has to be collected, it has to be analyzed, it has to be put into a report. The report has to be given to someone at this level who recommends it to someone at this level, who recommends it to someone at this level, who recommends it to someone at this level, to say we might have a problem. And that's great. You know, there are some companies that say, oh, yeah, that's a bad idea. But one of the things that happens in the speech phone system industry all the time is that you deploy a system that asks, yes, a yes-no question, and you get a bunch of responses like, not right now, or I already tried that, or no, I'm disabled. And people say, oh, well, geez, we got a problem here. How do we fix it? How do we fix it? I know. Let's change the prompt to say, please say yes or no at the end. That'll do it. And if you add please say yes or no to the prompt, and you deploy that system, I guarantee you will see that fewer people say something other than yes or no. But what do they think of being told, please say yes or no? What are the circumstances in real life where anyone ever says to you, or to anyone you've ever seen it said to, please say yes or no? Trials and Senate hearings, right? People being evasive. So you're being accused of being evasive. Do you like it? No. Do you say yes or no? Probably. What? Oh, well, weddings, yeah, sort of. Well, being evasive, you know. Right, there you go. And so all of these things mean that even if you have a system that's designed pretty well, these things are always evolving. There's always new business rules coming in. And they're actually pretty easy to change because, you know, unlike something you design that goes out on a phone, it can be changed in one place and updated for millions of callers the next day. And they do change over time. But the tendency is that they end up drifting into safe speak, bureaucratic safe speak, and they get harder to use. And then, like any other field, individual opinion drives violent change. So you can run 14 usability tests and do 12 crowdsourcing analyses of which versions of prompts are better and who your best voice talent is and what nice bum 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 ear con you play at the beginning of the call when anyone calls, and get complete agreement on that and deploy the system, and some executive VP is going to call up the next day and said, who put that bum 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 sound in there? I don't like that. You'd have changed that. So we're all familiar with that. So that's enough whining about what's wrong, but maybe a little bit of insight into why your experience was so miserable the last time you called one of these things that we didn't design at our company, because ours are much better. Yeah?
Who designs the soundtrack you have to listen to while you're on hold?
Completely different company. Good question.
How do you tell if it's the worst thing in the world? 15 minutes of this thing?
When you do get through to an agent, you say, by the way, I'd like to let you know, could you please tell your supervisors that your music is awful? And the agents will say, yes, sir, and they probably don't have a good way of passing that information along. I don't know. this also comes to the fact that most of these automated systems are put together from many different vendors, and the people that design the system that manages all the callers on hold and figures out which customer service rep to hook them up with, that's a different company than the company that does the interactive voice response. So I thought a long time ago it would be a great idea for your phone company to track your musical preferences, and to, when you called anybody, to pass those musical preferences along. So if you like listening to reggae, you call Microsoft Tech Support, you're going to hear reggae for half an hour. Yeah, that's good.
I have reggae on the radio now.
Well, so one of the philosophies that I try and use when bringing people up to speed on how to design for this, this kind of system is to encourage them to look not at the system itself and the features of it, but familiar idea, look at the users of the system and understand and model as closely as you can who the users are and what their expectations are and where they're coming from. So in particular, ask, how do other experiences shape the caller's expectations? What are those callers thinking when they pick up the phone? It's probably not, I need to call a phone company, and I don't know why, but maybe they'll say something at the beginning of the call that will remind me. And by the way, I actually heard this once. I was in a call center at Chemical Bank, back when there was a Chemical Bank in New York, and I was listening in on a call that some call center agent was handling. And the call came in, and she said, "This is Angie, how may I help you?" And the caller said, "Yeah, I'm getting married in 2 weeks." And I was like, why is this person calling the bank? And the customer service agent, hearing that the caller was female, said, "And you'd like to change the name on your account?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, that's why I'm calling." Which is pretty cool, actually. I was impressed by the customer service agent. And she also talked about merging the account with her fiance after they got married and so on. So that was a great call. But most of the time, people really know why they're calling and saying, "Good news, now you can check the status of your order over the phone." It's like, I already made up my mind to call you. You don't have to tell me that. What do callers learn in the first 5 seconds of interacting with one of these systems? We talked about that a little bit, but I'll give some other examples. What are they going to remember an hour later or a week later? And this is an important question for us to ask our clients before they start this interaction, because you can end up with some very different results. So I'm going to play some video here. Hopefully it is familiar to you all as being on sort of the consumer end of this. And think about what we as consumers learn when we have these experiences about technology. Just technology, okay? So the first one is a DVR. And the video isn't playing. Man. Let me see if I can get this to play a different way. Let's see, clock. So, right doesn't do anything. Down. Enter. Entered it. Down. Oh, I want clock. Enter. Right. Okay. Familiar? Anybody ever stopped using their VCR or their DVR because this was hard? No? Okay. go to a different example. Actually, I'm already on that side. Okay, time to heat up my coffee. Just for 20 seconds. 0 start. 3 minutes and Jesus. Stop. Reset. 20. Oh, 20. 2? What? Oh. Okay. Seem familiar? So, get back into my slideshow here. So, if this is our, consumers' interaction with technology. By the way, who stopped using microwaves because they're hard to figure out? Anybody? No. Okay. What people think of phone technology when they encounter it, probably first and foremost, is just it's technology. So earlier I was blaming all the other bad phone systems that are out there that you think this is going to be another bad one, even if it isn't. But even if you didn't think that, you'd be thinking, oh, it's a computer. These things, are always a problem. The only kind of technology that people ever trust is the ones that differentiate themselves by being dirt simple, right? So maybe we can take that lesson about keeping technology dirt simple and apply it to phone systems to end up with more successful phone systems. There's a tendency for a company that wants to provide more self-service to push more and more things into the interface. And so you end up with, if you want to, do this obscure thing, press 63. And is that really helping? It's sort of like the microwave manufacturer says, oh, I'll put a button on the front of the microwave that says reheat tuna casserole, and that way people who are reheating tuna casserole won't have to find a bunch of buttons to press. You've seen microwaves like this? Do you ever use those buttons? Maybe the popcorn button, right? Maybe. Same thing goes for our automated systems. The other thing to realize, and this is kind of important in a different way, is that we have a lot of customers who tell us, what's our customer satisfaction rating, and what are the customer satisfaction ratings of our competitors? And I think it's pretty much a useless question, because trying to talk about some kind of objective value of customer satisfaction, I think, is just not a useful exercise. I think you can talk about changes in customer satisfaction. System A and System B, and people like System B better, great. System B is the one they like better. And if they are subtly different from each other, all the better, because now you can maybe start ascribing reasons why they like B better. But if A and B are totally different, and they're put together by totally different companies, what you can learn from saying they like A or B better, I don't know what you can learn. There's too many variables in there. So the next example, and I'm going to guess the video will play. We'll see if this actually works. I asked the question, what are people thinking when they pick up the phone to call the company? And we have all kinds of customers who say, well, the great thing about the internet is that we spent $1 billion on our website, and we're actually seeing some automation there, but now we've got all this great infrastructure, and so we can provide the same self-service over the phone. Isn't that great? Now people have a choice. They can either go to the web or they can go to the phone. They can do all the same things. That'll be great. Let's put that out there. And they hire us to put all of those features there so that people can choose them and go to them. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who is calling. In this case, it happens to be Verizon, because that's what I happen to have, but no knock on Verizon. But let's wind the clock back to 2 minutes before they picked up the phone. Okay, this is someone who just got their bill.
$195.34. Wait, previous charge. Past due, 104. Essentials, basic service, taxes. Personal web space storage. That's not right.
Okay, so imagine that person now reaches over, picks up the phone, and calls the company. And they get an automated system that says, if you'd like to hear your bill balance, press 1. Is this caller going to press 1? No. Okay. If the option is for billing, press 1. Would you press 1? Yeah. Yeah. To hear a breakdown of your, so let's assume that you press 1. And by the way, yes, I'm saying press 1, but of course the speech interface would be much cooler. But you know, if you did press 1 to say, yeah, I want the billing department, and then you heard, to hear a breakdown of your current charges, press 1. Would you press 1? No. It said to hear an explanation of your charges. Would you press 1? No. Right? Most of us don't call the companies that we pay for services. We don't need to because things are working right. When do we call them? When the system is working wrong. What do you get when you call those systems? Part of the system. That's wrong. Why should you spend any time with it? Now, what you do about that in terms of an interface is an interesting question. But somehow you're going to have to convince the caller, if you do think you have a solution to this kind of problem, why they should interact with a system that's part of a larger system that's wrong. Because mostly what people want to do is get through to a human being and say, your system is wrong, would you please fix it and refund my money? Or your system is wrong, this was supposed to be here today, would you please fix it and make sure it does get delivered today? Or your system is wrong, and I know that there are seats available in the front row, so would you find those seats and buy them for me, please? That's why people pick up the phone, not to do the exact same things that they can do on the web, especially today. I mean, a very large percentage of people who are customers of virtually any company in the United States have web access and are comfortable enough to go to those web pages to do all kinds of things. I'm not saying that we shouldn't automate these services over the phone. I'm just saying that we can't assume that it's going to be the reason people are calling. The next problem that we have when designing these systems is that there's very often a confusion between presenting solutions and presenting problems. And or in other words, when we should be asking, what does the caller want? What we end up answering is, what do we have to offer? So think of that phone company billing orders or repair. You know, it's very often that if you have a current system that performs like that, and you go to the company and you say, why are those the three choices? The answer is, well, those are our three departments. All of our calls end up going to the billing department or the orders department or the repair department. So we might as well find out which one we're supposed to go to. But that's not why the callers are calling. That's what you're going to do in response. The closest metaphor I have for this is walking into a Walgreens, and there are basically three kinds of pain relief that are sold in a Walgreens, right? Aspirin, ibuprofen, acetaminophen. And that doesn't mean there's not a lot of choices. There's usually like an astounding number of choices, depending on what you want to pay and what shape you want the pill to be and everything else. But when you go into a Walgreens or a CVS or anywhere else, you might appreciate the self-service. There is value in off-the-shelf and buying it yourself, but you as a consumer know when you want to speak to the pharmacist. And if you went to the pharmacist and the pharmacist said, I'm busy helping other people who have prescriptions, could you go read the boxes in the pain relief aisle? And if you can't figure out which pain reliever you want, then you know, come back and check with me. You would not be happy, right? Now, it's interesting. I actually think pharmacies know this, and that's why when you look up above the aisles, it doesn't say acetaminophen. It says headaches, because that's why you went into the store, because you have a headache. And foot aches is another aisle, and back aches is another aisle. So now I want to turn to the question of, that I asked earlier of what callers learn in the first 5 seconds of an application. And again, I'm going to answer that question by not showing you the first 5 seconds of an application, but showing you a completely different interaction with customer service in, quote unquote, the real world, okay? Again, think about yourself possibly being in the situation where the traffic was a little heavy and the garage you usually park in is full, and you get to the airport and you have to check in because you couldn't find, your printer wasn't working last night when you wanted to print your boarding pass, and you're just getting to the airport and you're a little worried about getting on the plane. Oh man, I'm gonna be late, I'm gonna be late, I'm gonna be late. Oh my God. Okay, I'll give it a try. English. Use card. Okay, so maybe I'm successful with that. That's airport check-in. What about Home Depot checkout? Self-checkout. Oh, God. I should pay. I haven't done anything yet. Oh, scanner. Oi, door. Jeez. You know you will say that we're let's see. Number 6 is open. Number six, no line. No line! You picture yourself doing either of those things? So what's going on in both of those situations that we just saw? A lot of stuff, actually. The big thing to me is that there's transparency in your choices. You walk into the airport, you can see right away, oh my God, there's 12 people ahead of me in line for one customer service agent. Not only that, you can see, oh my God, one of the people in line has a stroller with 2 kids in it. And oh my God, there's some really old people in the front of the line. And oh my God, there's somebody with a cart full of luggage. And at that point, you're probably not thinking, stupid airline. You're probably thinking, I should have got here earlier. And right there, right next to it is a self-service kiosk with nobody at it. So you say, I'll give it a try, which is great. And what if it doesn't work? Well, the line's right there. Whereas the way most phone systems are done today, even if they give you a choice, it's more like you step out of the cab on the curb outside the airport and there's a doorway that says escalator up to wait for an agent and another doorway that says escalator down to sign in by yourself. And you're like, what? I don't know how many people are waiting for an agent. I don't know how long the wait's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to be successful doing self-service, but I'm like, I'm going to make this choice and then I'm committed. Why can't we have more transparency of the choices? Why can't we show people what's going on? And if people have any chance at all of getting through to someone quickly, they will run and take it. So when you have an automated system that doesn't do those things, that doesn't give you the option of self-service or talking to someone, you're not trusting them to choose for themselves. And if it's not clear that it's going to be easy to switch, you're not giving them that option. If you're not revealing the comparative costs of self-service versus waiting for an agent, costs in the general sense, what you're really broadcasting is, you're not going to like this option. Because if you did, I'd make it an option for you, like every other self-service organization does outside of phone systems. But because I'm not, it must be something I'm not going to like. Somewhat different point, queuing theory. Anyone into queuing theory? It's kind of cool. I don't know that much about it myself, but you know, the basic premise of at a Wendy's or Burger King, there's one line. First in, first out. Everybody waits. You go in, oh my God, that's a really long line. But it moves pretty quickly. And then on the other hand, you have McDonald's, got to choose a line. Lines are shorter. Oh, there's only 4 people ahead of me. Which do you prefer? Okay. This is because you're all, you know, really smart CHI people. Actually, my understanding is that while the single queue is theoretically more efficient for any given person, the single queue, if you factor in that people can change lines, and it's not just that they pick it and there they go, that then they sort of equal each other out a little bit.
Single queue multiple server decreases the variance, not the total.
But there's the psychological effect that you've got to work in as well. And in phone systems, we don't even tell people how many people are ahead of you in line. And if you think about it, it's sort of an interesting thing. Imagine calling into a phone system and instead of hearing, the next available agent will be with you in approximately 46 minutes. Okay, if you hear that, what do you think? Stupid company, they didn't hire enough employees. If you hear, okay, and by the way, I have to work on the wording of this because we've never convinced anybody to do it, but if you were to hear, okay, I'll get you an agent. Let me find you the one with the shortest line of people ahead of you. Oh, here they are. Okay, there's 3 people ahead of you getting served, but you'll be next. How would that change your perception of what's going on, especially if it starts to take a long time? I went into Penn Station, and I actually had an Acela ticket, and they had 2 lines at Amtrak, one for regular train and one for Acela people. And there were like 14 people in line for the regular train and 2 people in line for the Acela. And I was like, this is great. I finally win. You know, I'm going to get in the short line. So I went over and I got in the short line, and sure enough, right away, one of those 2 people went and got served by the one Acela person who was helping them. I was like, great, I only have 1 person left. And then that person was done lickety-split, and the last person, you know, the next guy right in front of me went to the window to talk to the Acela person and was there for 10 minutes. And I was watching this group of, you know, this line of 14 people in the regular line, you know, go 6, 7 people just going through, buying their tickets and leaving. And meanwhile, this one idiot in front of me, you know, and I was mad at the consumer, not at Amtrak, because I had that transparency. I could see what was going on. We put people in this box and we say, well, you know, we're not going to really tell you exactly how long it's going to take, and we're not going to tell you why it's taking a long time, and we're not giving you any visibility into the idea that we're actually doing anything other than making you wait. Whereas every other self-service context does give you that feedback. Can't we figure out a way to give people that feedback over the phone? I don't know. Lastly, I just want to close with a couple of other things that can hopefully help us look at these kinds of audio interfaces in ways that we can make them better. You know, it's always good to figure out what your goal is. And you know, one goal you have for self-service is to get people to self-serve, but another is what you might want them to remember. And if you set out saying, oh, what I want them to remember is, that automated self-service over the phone was awesome. I'm going to call all my friends and tell them that they should do automated self-service with this company too. Great, good luck to you. You know, it might be a little more realistic to say that your goal is to have people hang up the phone and say, hey, that wasn't too awful. And, you know, depending on where you set your sights, you know, you might end up with a better system. Or even less, you know, it's like, huh, I guess I could try that again. Wasn't too bad. Especially if it's someplace you're going to be calling frequently. You'll self-serve the next time. You get more familiar with it. But too many applications that are out there that are designed today are designed, you know, to say self-service at any cost. We don't care if there's a lot of pain in doing self-service, as long as there's self-service, because that's what our business model says. But of course, if you try and do self-service and you have a miserable time of it, and you fail, and you end up getting transferred to an agent, and the agent doesn't have any of the information that you so painstakingly put into the automated system, what are you going to do the next time you call? Go straight to the agent. Why waste your time? So that would presumably be a loss, except for the fact that none of the companies doing these systems, or very few of them, I should say, some do, very few of them measure that effect. They don't look longitudinally at what happens for a given phone number in terms of when people call back and whether they're more likely to try self-service if they were successful on the previous call. So to them, it's not a loss. you know, I don't know how to answer these questions in general other than to say, well, what do we remember? What do you remember about your last automated phone interaction? Do you remember what the words were? Do you remember what the options were? What do you remember about it? Okay. Here's a tougher question. What do you remember about your last good interaction with an automated phone system?
I got to an agent fast.
Okay. Yeah, in the back. Okay, this pharmacy is a great prescription refill line. Great. Do you remember what the prompts were? Okay. Someone remembers the voice. Okay. That's what you remember. It's easy, it's hard, whatever.
You can have a successful, easy experience on a medical thing.
Yeah.
And still land up feeling frustrated because they kept asking and asking and asking easy questions.
Yeah.
And they just kept asking and asking.
Yeah.
You got through it and you accomplished it, but you weren't expecting it, and they just kept asking.
Right. I certainly agree. I would say that that's something that you can attack via sort of traditional kind of design methodologies of saying, you know, are we going to put out the tasks, you know, lay out something for the caller so they understand what we're going to step them through? Are we going to give them milestones along the way and rewards saying, great, we're halfway done, you know, whatever. Are we building a system that gives them the audio feedback that they're used to in other environments? So, you know, any of us who go to a doctor's office are used to having a nurse come out and say, okay, I got to go through the checklist. Any family history of heart disease, diabetes, epilepsy, psoriasis, you know. And they go through 40 items, but they do it really quickly. And sometimes, you know, every once in a while you have to say, wait, go back. Yeah, actually, high blood pressure. And that's fine, that works. So maybe we should, if we do have to ask 40 questions, maybe we should figure out a way to make it work like the real world system works, instead of the technology that we're using to make it work. And if we want to ask users about what they like about systems and what they remember about systems, then we have to start educating our customers about when to ask those questions. Because if you want to get, and again, this is sort of classic design stuff, if you want to get detailed feedback on what was good and what was bad, you better get them right away. But if you want to get whether they're going to be loyal to the pharmacy that they're at, because that was actually surprisingly easy, you're probably better off asking them 2 or 3 weeks later. I have yet to encounter a client of ours that does both of those things at the same time and on a regular basis. So this is the obligatory recap slide, which I'll try and whip through because you've all been doing such a great job listening. Technology is only good if it's simple. I think you're going to see that these are a lot of the same lessons for phone interfaces for anything else. Try to avoid reheating tuna casserole, always a good rule. Go look for frustration so that you can minimize it instead of looking for good experiences. Model what callers need, not what you provide. Understand that you might not offer what they think they need, which is different from you might not offer what they actually need. Try and make these systems as transparent as possible because they're not transparent at all. Experiment with choice. Don't be afraid of choice. We deployed a system, one of our more famous systems is Julie at Amtrak. Anyone call Julie? Okay. Julie is named, which is sort of unusual, but it works for Amtrak. And once upon a time, the prompt when you called in, 1-800-USA-RAIL, for those of you that want to try it, was, "Hi, I'm Julie. How can I help you?" And they were curious, and so they did a champion-challenger experiment where some callers heard, "Hi, I'm Julie, Amtrak's automated agent. How may I help you?" And of course, everybody thought, ooh, that's not going to perform as well, because now we're telling people it's automated. Maybe they weren't paying attention before. In fact, more people zeroed out right away when she said she was an automated agent But of the people that stayed in, those people were more successful. And so they actually ended up with more automation by telling people it was an automated system at the front. So our ideas about when it's good to offer people choices, when it's good to give them more information, when it's not, may surprise us in terms of what actually happens at the end. And then finally, the rule that you shouldn't just be looking at what people are leaving behind in terms of button presses or utterances that they spoke. You want to be looking at the people themselves, the users, and understanding them. And that's what I have. Got time for questions, or I went over? Yep.
A lot of the time, the company's business processes are too complicated, so the whole reason you need an agent is because the business process is so complicated. Do you ever give advice about that?
We try.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the question was, a lot of times these systems are complicated because the business process is complicated, and do we advise customers on that? Whenever we can. But again, you have that issue of the segmentation of responsibilities within large corporations. And if, you might get full agreement from everybody that is charged with working with you on building the interactive voice system, but they're not the people that get to have any say in the changing of policy. That's an organizational behavior question that I wish I knew the answer to, but I don't. Yep?
When I was discussing the medical phone call, I forgot to mention the expectation of the person getting it. When I first got the phone call, it was like, do I trust these people? How do they have my number? This is very sensitive. I have, I'm ordering medicine, and I didn't know that they were going to call, and it was totally automated.
Right.
And in addition, the expectation of a different phone call altogether is you have to call. Is anyone here, I'm sure there's a few who've been on unemployment, and the call is going to be 30 to 45 to 50 minutes. And in this case, yeah, you want to know how long it is so you can start making your lunch and eat your lunch and finish with your lunch and clean up before you have to get back to the phone.
Yep.
Expectation really fuels a lot of this.
Yeah. The first thing, I think you were talking about outbound calling, where you're getting the phone call instead of you're sitting down to make the phone call. You're absolutely right. That's critical that you set expectations there, and that you don't assume too much about the person picking up the phone. And there's a whole different set of rules we operate under when we're doing that. As far as the reverse, or maybe the more common situation, there are companies that are starting to do more things like virtual hold, where they tell you, the wait for an agent is going to be 15 minutes. Do you want us to call you back when one's available? And then you can say, yeah, sure, that'd be great, and maybe even set up a time when they're going to call you back. And they can be pretty good about scheduling that. So there's a little bit more respect for time there. I can see that going even further to say, okay, this should take about 12 minutes, when you are doing something. So it would be a big help.